Hello, everyone, and welcome to Science and Sorcery's Moment of Awesome. My name's Sam, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm delighted to be back for another chat with a member of the TTRPG community about who they are, what they do, and why they are awesome. So, starting off, Aida, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, my name is Aida. My pronouns are she and her. I am a queer Latina woman of color. I'm an immigrant in the Netherlands. And thank you for saying I'm awesome, Sam. I think you're awesome too. I am a TTRPG, mostly actual play producer. I like being behind the scenes and I like making those ideas and plans of telling a visual produced story. I like making that come into fruition. So when there's checklists to be done, when there's tech work to be done, I'm the one happily volunteering to do those things.
And one thing that you kind of left out of there is that you're an award-nominated producer in the space as well, right?
Oh, I was recently nominated for the Crit Awards, which was very, very kind. It was a really tough category to be in. And I will also say that the Crit Awards are still new. It was the second year. It said Best Producer. What does that mean? Does that mean the production therefore or the technical editing thereof? I think those are very separate categories. People I was with them like, these are some wowzer video wizards. I don't know what they do else in the back end or what that entails, but I think production is this bigger thing unless you start adding a lot more descriptive things. I'm not yet a video editing wizard. That's something I'd like to embark in the future. But everything else, I'm good. I'm great at that.
I have spoken to your co-conspirator for EUphoria as well, and it was lulling into a false sense of security when I am going to talk about how good you are at things, so that's going to come up throughout. But in terms of when it comes to production, for you, what are those most important parts of production and show running for TTRPGs?
So there's a lot that goes into hitting stream, and there's also very little that goes into it. And I think the difference between a show that you're happy and proud of and a show that will captivate audiences and maybe hopefully start going into professional venues where you can compensate the performers and role players and yourself for the time put in. The difference is, for me, one, it's really important that that table feels safe, comfortable, and uplifted. They feel that who they're working with is being communicative, who they're working with is someone that seems reliable, that has a good reputation in the community, whose values are clear and known, making sure that they know that their safety, their comfort via safety tools, via check-ins, via being the careful listener in the background, even though I'm not at the table. I'm going to make sure I'm listening for X cards, listening for those red lights, seeing the checks or the minuses going in the private chat, and also being their personal hype person. So when the cast feels empowered and they feel safe, they're going to have a better game. And then the other thing that goes into producing is the bells and whistles. It's going to be, can you put up an accessible overlay that broadens your audience, that includes captions? Your captions look great, Sam, by the way. That includes overlays that are accessible to people that might be sensitive to triggers and have seizures, accessible to people who are colorblind, who have descriptions of the people at the table themselves for those that might be visually impaired, who broadens your audience. And then a good AP is a table that is inclusive, representative. I know that when I'm watching all the stream channels, Twitch channels, and it's just kind of scrolling through, this is my bias, and I don't care how much hot water it gets me into, but if I see a cast of all white cis men, I immediately decided just by that thumbnail, it's not a good show, or it's not a good show for me. And if there's not really much people of color, non-white representation, or non-woman, non-femme representation, I also decide that's probably not a good game for me. So by my standard, and I think it should be the community standards that you and I are both in, Sam, making that be one of the core principles, core values, is also going to elevate that game, because you have different perspectives, different storytelling, different nuances, and more talent that might get ignored if you're only looking for people with the most followings that'll happen to be maybe wonderful, kind people, but all happen to be cis white people.
I know it's definitely not moving fast enough, but do you feel like there is a movement towards trying to move that to a standard, or are we still not quite there yet?
The little movements are still huge, because for a while it was in my own circle. Of course, it was just me. And then when I had one more person, that's 100% increase. I mean, you tell anyone applying for a job that you got triple digit increases. Wow, that's really good. Got 2 more. Oh my goodness. I think the biggest challenge is that you and I we're talking as people based in Europe, and the cultural mindset of that compared to, let's say, the United States is rather different. Here in Europe, at least I'm based in the Netherlands, demographically, people of color, non-white people, are a demographic minority just by population numbers. That is not the case for many parts of the US, or I think just the country entirely. Even though countries like the Netherlands and other countries in Europe have benefited from generations of labor and colonialism from their colonies and other people of color in those communities. But they're not represented in news channels, in celebrity, in media, in culture, and not at the local TTRPG gaming table. When I go to my local friendly, my local gaming shops, I'm usually the only woman and definitely the only person of color. If I go to local European conventions, not many, but I go to them every now and then. Women, femme, great. We're doing much better. POC, why is that? Well, because when you look around and you're the only person that you can just tell visually probably doesn't share my own experience, it's going to be harder to make those connections. So we are moving, and I think having those 2, 3, now they're 5, now I need more than 2 hands to count, which is fantastic. I think I might be running out of toes on my feet as well. Getting that ball rolling is slow, but I think it's just going to be hugely mountainous growth once we get that rolling.
It's interesting you mentioned about conventions, specifically. It was recently, at the time of recording, it was recently Tabletop Scotland, which is like our biggest tabletop con, and I didn't see a single person of colour like represented amongst the audience. The stall holders, any of the organising team were all like older white people, mostly men again. So it's like, as you say, yeah, it's small steps that are moving in certain parts, but at least in Scotland, it's definitely not.
I'm pretty certain that there are thriving communities, and more than just dozens, hundreds of people of color within Scotland that love TTRPGs, and they know about the conventions, and they know about the game night at said store. They know about those community events. But when they're like, nah, I'm going to feel like a sore thumb, they're probably going to roll their eyes or do something. They're bringing also their own assumptions that are based on their life experiences. And that's really unfortunate, but it takes a lot of guts to be the first one that says, I'm going to make an impression, because you end up being the de facto representative. That's a bit heavy.
No, 100%. I wanted to come back to thinking about the kind of way that you split cast, because I know that you had the Women in Gaming Month like event earlier this year, and there was like quite a large contingent of those players and GMs were people of color, right? Like, you put a lot of work into that to make that happen.
Yeah. The Women in Gaming Month happened with a channel called Horde of Tales that I was originally with, and they're still great friends of mine, but I've, with my co-conspirator Darcy, we decided we need to be the boss of everything, so we are with EUphoria. Values are very, very similar. But with the communities that I have worked with, volunteered with, assisted with, especially when you have open casting calls, those casting calls are predominantly cis white people, for all the reasons, or some of the reasons I gathered that I mentioned earlier. And it takes a lot of energy and conscious effort to say, even though they didn't sign up, it's worth the time and energy to scroll through Twitter, ask trusted individuals, ask communities, and say, hey, we are giving some personal encouragement here that I'd really like you to sign up, and I'm going to value your story more. It is a factual way of casting that we say we're going to cast people from marginalized communities first. Because I have no lack of friends, speaking for myself, if I were to say I want to play D&D in person right now in the Netherlands, where I geographically sit, I have no lack of cis white friends, 99% of them, cis men as well. They are wonderful, good, kind people that I trust inherently and I think are great allies, but I'm drowning in them. So it would take a lot of energy for me to say, okay, who do I know that I can get to rep the table and give a fresh chance, instead of just going, they didn't apply, they weren't interested. Maybe they were thinking the same way that I was, as I was mentioning earlier. Maybe it takes a talk in Discord, a talk over Twitter, or a phone call to say, hey, I'd really like you to sign up. What are your concerns? How can I assuage them? What do you need from me? What extra hoops can I jump through to make you feel welcome and supported? Because I want to hear your story. It's worth doing that work and not just saying, well, no one signed up. They didn't sign up. The POC didn't sign up. Or there are just not so few of them demographically in the country. They make such a small proportion of the population. That's not good enough for myself or for Darcy.
Yeah, a minority still means you exist and should be represented and brought in. So yeah, completely agree. Moving forward into EUphoria now, though, you're running the things behind the scenes there, and you've just come off the back of your summer of sci-fi series that happened in August. Could you tell us a little bit about it and the experiences from that event that you think you'll be taking forward for future events as well?
Sure. To piggyback a bit, the Women in Gaming month that I did at Horde of Tales was in March, and I had the idea of saying, hey, Women's History Month is in March. I'd like to do it in March. Normally it was done in November. When the other people on Horde of Tales said, we don't have time, Aida, if you can put a plan, then I guess you could go for it. And I'm like, here's your encyclopedia of plans, but I need a individual to do all of this with. And I called Darcy, and Darcy was like, yeah, I just had a kid. I have all the time in the world. And we banged that out. And together, the lessons learned was that we have good organizing and communication expectations. When we say something is going to get done, it's going to get done. You can hold us responsible to it. When we have an idea, it's going to be executed. They're not just things floating in the ether, so to say. And we also learned that two people can just manage 60 participants across 15 streams in 1 month. That was our limit. So taking those lessons into the Summer of Sci-Fi, which was our kickoff event this past August, where we decided to have exclusively European cast all play sci-fi themed games, we learned what are our strengths in our networks, because we've met a lot of people on all our respective adventures, and we're going to try and get people who we think are talented, representative of that EU TTRPG community talent. In terms of communication and planning, we learned friend, even if I'm talking to Aida talking to Aida, friend, yes, we were able to do back-to-back this. It was physically, logistically possible, but let's be kinder to ourselves and say, if we don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do this properly, safely, and even to our own mental well-being, then we should not do it. And I think that's a very difficult lesson to impart on any other community, where I see people trying their best and forcing themselves and pushing so hard. And they're like, we don't have time for session 0. You know what? We're just going to go ahead. The show must go on. I'm here to say no. The show should not go on. I understand that there is a lot of affection towards what you've created, but sometimes you have to control A and hit backspace or delete and don't look into the backup, because if you don't have the spoons or the capacity to do that safely, comfortably, in a way that doesn't burn you out, really consider whether it's worth doing in the first place. You might feel better about it if you push that project later on. And if it was a project that had to get done, no, this must go on, then what is going around that is taking away from this most important project? If everything is so important, then nothing's important at all. I think those were, for me, the core lessons that I took into Summer of Sci-Fi and any other big projects, especially that I do with Darcy, with Euphoria, or any other community. Prioritize and then put proper amounts of energy into those projects without burning yourself out, and know when to edit and say, stop, this is enough. It's hard.
I think it's something we're all continually learning and trying to grapple with. I know I'm trying to like pin that down. But like, to hear that it's something that you both are really kind of focused on and really pushed for is just really inspiring to take forward, you know, and that like it's something that I have really noticed and like really appreciated from both of yourselves, is that willingness to share what you've just said there, or share other knowledge about putting together actual plays. And do you see that as something that is key to growing this space and making it sustainable, high quality, and safe?
Absolutely. When was the last time you and I have played at a table that was not your channel or my channel, respectively? Have you played at other tables?
No, I think it's always been respective.
We both traded back.
Yeah.
I've been at quite some other tables in the meantime, and they always invite me, and after I make sure that the cast is diverse, values are aligned, okay. And then once to get in there and I see their work process, it's sort of a moment where I'm diplomatically behind the smile going, I would do that a little differently. Now I know why we do what we're doing, even though it costs more energy, there's more checklists and there's more things to manage. There's a reason why it should be done like this or that. And now that I've had that taste of those higher standards, and then I'm with tables that I'm seeing having a harder time to go forward because they're going through the same challenges. They haven't learned the lessons I've learned yet. And I don't exactly want to go actually every single time I do so where I can diplomatically. The lessons of safety, of quality, I think should be standardized, because not only does it make, hopefully, the AP or the hobby easier to access, it also makes for a better community. It makes for better application of those values we're professing to have. And it makes for safer and more fun tables. Because I see a lot of streams, for example, that don't have any captions whatsoever. My partner is hard of hearing. And I have the opposite problem where I have to turn volume really, really low. Otherwise, things kind of like really hurt my head. It took me a while to understand, actually, captions is something pretty easy we can do. Oh, is it too hard to afford Zoom or Google Meets and captions? Here's the way to do it. Here's the way to do it. You have too many tabs open? Here's the way to do it. Here's the way to do it. I'm happy to share that knowledge, because if it gets to that point where everyone just has captions because it's as simple as everyone being on camera or everyone being on audio, I'd love that 3D standardization. And then we can move on to even better things. Who knows what else will be standardized if things like captions are standardized, if things like session zeros with safety tools are standardized, if session zeros with safety tools are standardized by having someone other than the GM run them. Imagine how much higher we could go if we all agree to bring those base foundational levels up.
And how do you think we get to that? Because it's all about like information sharing, and like there's also things like we live in a capitalist hellscape, and people are given over time and effort, and time is money, and people might want to be compensated for giving those things over, but not always. But what do you think the way forward is?
I think compensation does really matter, and that is important. But I also think it's important to share skills especially to people who might not have access to, for example, give that monetary compensation. I'm going to share my skills with friends who I know, for example, follow the same values I have, because then I'm going to see those skills used at tables that are inclusive, tables that are spaced, tables that are safe, tables that tell great diverse of local stories, because I'm in Europe and I want to see that community grow. I'm sharing my skills with people I know are going to be running charity events, and I'm like, please save your money, stop giving it to Zoom, stop trading the AI machines. Let me show you how to do this and save yourself a world of effort, because those little ripples we sent into the pond are going to empower other people who, through other circumstances, have otherwise been marginalized or underrepresented. Anyone else looking to make a buck, add quick polish, or looking for professional advancements and have the capacity to pay should be paying. And I think it's fair to expect payment from at that level as well. But if you're my friend or you're not my friend yet, and you want to use skills to start something wonderful, caring, supportive, then it's fair of me, and I have the capacity to give my time and that same energy back to them.
We're rapidly running out of time because it just like absolutely disappears in front of you. But thank you so much for sharing that. What advice would you give to someone who is interested in getting involved with the production aspect of TTRPGs? If they've never done it before, where would you say to start?
Production, how to get started with production. One of the things that I think is the hardest thing to get started is for playing TTRPGs is having a GM and having someone with the willingness to learn how to produce, which unfortunately is very gate-kept because you do need somewhat of a stable internet connection, which you can't always control or is unaffordable. And you need a somewhat okay computer, which again is another thing that not everyone can achieve. But if you have those two things, there are a lot of guides out there, but volunteer your time with a group that you know that you trust. Ask to shadow them, because producers, Aida, loves to talk out loud and think out loud when doing those things. And production is something that actual play production for streaming TTRPGs online is something that you can practice on your own with zero loss. You can put on a fake stream onto a fake Twitch. You can test things, and you never have to your work never actually goes live until you're ready. There are lots and lots of ways to practice, to add the bells, to take away the bells, to see what you can handle. And I'm sure if you find a community and producer you trust, they're more than happy to share their skills, because a lot of producers want a break. They want to say, okay, I need to go watch a movie or hang up. Can you produce? Thank you so much. Bye. You want to be that person.
Yeah, I feel that a lot. Before we get to the very end, what's exciting you the most about the community right now?
I am seeing some friends of mine getting applauded, getting elevated, getting invited to higher projects, getting invited to record in studios, getting invited to play at some kick-ass museums and public spaces, and seeing their work be validated makes my heart grow a million sizes, especially if I can go and applaud them on. And then if I can also kind of selfishly go and take their lessons and apply them to me. And then we're just kind of this vortex of happy validation, but also lesson learning. So I want to keep being that person behind the scenes, giving someone that confidence, and then seeing them go far and off, and me being super proud of them, especially if they are based in Europe, because we're lacking that representation on the global stage, especially if they're from a marginalized community, like being LGBTQ+, like being POC, women or femme, or any other marginalized community. I want to be part of that foundational undercurrent. I want to be the wind underneath your wings without getting into copyright strikes.
Yeah, please don't. Let's not get struck. Thank you so much for coming to have a chat with me. Before we go, what's next for you and EUphoria?
What's next? EUphoria has been in some really banger meetings about some really big projects that even I'm getting a bit of imposter syndrome about, but I'm like, no, we're ready. The names that are being tossed around, the ideas that are being tossed around really showcase the immense talent that is here locally and regionally. I think is going to also launch us into a bit of a more professional level as well. And what gets me excited is I'm doing this for fun. I recognize I'm not going to be a millionaire. This is not a career, the bill paying kind of career. But to be able to get to a point where I can give some sort of compensation to the performers and people working hard alongside me gets me really excited. And you want to come along for the ride? Hit me up at EUphoria APs. We're on all the socials. I'm sure Sam is going to be very kind. Is going to link to them wherever we can. And especially if you are a person of color, if you are a BAME, Black, Asian, ethnic minority based in Europe, call me.
Ida, thank you so much for coming to have a chat. Always a pleasure to talk to you about all of the things that you've got going on and how you put all these things together. Folks, if you are watching at home, please do go and click the links that are alongside this video and find out all of the amazing things that are going on with the EUphoria. But for now, take care and we'll see you all again.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.